we're here today with the director, showrunner, and writer of Warrior Nun. Simon has been involved in a lot of various other shows in different capacities. He's based in Vancouver and works in Los Angeles and has done film as well as TV all over the world. And he's known for some of our favorite shows, obviously Warrior Nun, but also like Van Helsing, Continuum. And Simon, you have some other shows and things in the works right now. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can tell you I'm in post-production right now on a show for Netflix called Bet, which is based on the manga book Kakaguri, which is kind of a crazy take on a private boarding school where all the kids are basically addicted to gambling and decide who's in a top position based on that. So it's a little bit of a wacky kind of adaptation with deep manga roots. So it's a little bit out there.
Well, it seems to be on brand for you, especially with Warrior Nun and where it got its start. So it seems like a good place to take it.
I do like adaptations. I'm doing some other adaptations too. I'm adapting a Pulitzer Prize winning novel right now for another company. So yeah, it's an interesting challenge to take something that was never intended to be on television at its original form and figure out a way to make it, fun, digestible entertainment.
Absolutely. So we have a lot of questions that have been submitted by members of the fandom. We have some scenes and stuff that we wanted to kind of get the director's commentary on and get some information and behind the scenes tidbits from you. Which would you prefer to hop in on first?
I mean, whatever you guys want to do. Some of the questions I don't know if I have the answers to, but I'm happy to go with the flow here. So I'll let you guys decide.
Perfect. And for everybody who's watching at home, we did our best to pick scenes and things that were stuff that we hadn't heard from Simon before or from any other person on the show. We wanted to get new information. We know Simon and Eve answered a lot of some of the same questions before from the fandom, so we wanted to get kind of some things that we hadn't heard of before, and information regarding that and your work on the show, any behind the scenes. So if at any time you want us to like pause or you can explain anything that's going on or just kind of like funny or interesting moments of anything that we watch, we would love that and appreciate that very much.
Happy to.
Okay. Fan, are you good to go ahead and do that, or did you want to jump into questions first?
I'm good. We can start with the video, and I think that's what most people would be most interested in at the moment anyway. So give me one sec to share my screen, and then we're good to go.
Wonderful.
They're all alive, including Mother Superior. How should we proceed?
Well, as you know, I did not direct this scene, so I can't really speak to a lot of the director's commentary.
We saved them all.
Showrunners will work.
I believe
writer.
this was, I think Dennis directed this episode. I'm not sure. I got to double check.
I'm going in.
They'll turn that room into a shooting gallery.
Then I'll deal with it.
So one of the questions that sort of ties into this, well, you'll see it in a minute, is Suzanne and Shannon. Yeah. Right here, it gives you a bit of
I'm sorry, Shannon.
Like a pairing, and we didn't know if there were different pairings that you had planned for the future, or that we showed, or if this was actually a pairing.
Oh, you mean romantically?
Yes.
We are not intending to indicate that here. The Shannon relationship was really set up for Mary, and so we didn't want to confuse or overlap multiple warrior nuns with other warrior nuns. It didn't really feel like that would be Mary's character. So we just liked the idea that there was always a bond between them, between all the warrior nuns, you know?
Yeah.
And it didn't always have to be a romantic one. It was, a lot of it was just really just this bond of sisterhood, of being a warrior nun and having, you know, your fellow warrior nuns really be your family in the line.
So, sort of with that in mind, the warrior nun's abilities that we see here, were they created for a specific reason, or other than just, you know, being awesome and having powers for the Halo Bearer?
I mean, the answer is yes to both. We wanted to give each warrior nun a specific power that was unique to them, that was tied into their individuality. And then we chose the ones that we also felt would be useful in the scene that we were putting together so that we could exploit and demonstrate them. But I wouldn't want to presume that there was like a secondary storyline that we were, you know, building off of. We really were taking each sequence as a single kind of statement of what we could infuse into the show's mythology and into the scene itself. So everything is very literal. And I'll use the example of, like, if we had wanted to indicate a romantic relationship between Shannon and Suzanne, we would have done that. That's good. That's what you do as a writer. You indicate what you want to indicate, and you don't indicate what you don't. So it would have been a failure on our part if we had wanted that to be shared with the audience. And that's why we didn't do it, because it wasn't part of the story.
And I had a quick question before we move on to that next scene, Simon, with the Halo rejecting Suzanne. We've talked about the Halo a little bit before, and I mean we're 2 years post, and maybe you can give us some more information on this. Is the Halo sentient, or was it Suzanne's feeling of like rejecting it herself because of her actions that she lost the Halo?
We felt like, I think in the conversations we all had in the writing room, we liked the idea that there was a component of the Halo that did have a sentience to it, that was not only choosing whether someone was a viable candidate or not, but also could adjust if their behavior changed in any way that sort of didn't fall in line with the Halo's mission. And so, yeah, it's kind of a combo, to be honest. That was at least what we had talked about in the room, and also coming out of just thinking in terms of the larger implications of what the Halo represented to everyone who wanted it. It needed to have, you know, I don't want to say a supernatural ability, but it needed to be something that was beyond the control of the people who all desire it.
I had a question. That is obviously a really important like moment for Suzanne, and showing like she was the Halo Bearer, she lost it. This is kind of how she became the way she is. Had you thought about any more flashbacks in like further down in the plot line in the series, more flashbacks showing like more of her backstory?
In season 2, no. That was the only one we really had written for season 2. I think there was conversations at one point about I think we had talked a little bit in the room about how to build out her relationship with Vincent a bit more in flashbacks at one point, but we never got around to it, and it never really needed to happen in terms of what we were doing in real time. You know, a lot of times we throw a lot of stuff out because it's not relevant to what we're doing in the present. So I know there's like a desire to have tons of mythology and we think everything in terms of mythology has to be relevant to what's happening in the now, not in the past only. So the context is always about the scene that, we're doing in the show that's happening in front of us, as opposed to just providing context with no connection to anything else. So a lot of times we'll throw things out because they just don't really have context in the episode that is being made.
Yeah, that certainly makes sense with an 8 or 10 episode format.
Well, we only have so much real estate, and
Yeah,
we only,
exactly.
50 minutes to tell the story we're supposed to tell. And so anytime there's anything extra that isn't adding to that story that we're showing, it's usually not going to make it into production because everything costs so much that if you don't shoot what you have to shoot, you don't get the luxury of shooting things that aren't actually relevant to the story you're telling, because that's just money that the network or the studio just doesn't really feel is necessary, so they won't spend it.
To follow down that train of thought, is in the writer's room that same kind of methodology it did too, is in like you're not kind of fleshing out a lot of the lore just because you don't have time to explore it? Or is it
We
something
will.
that you guys
No.
develop as writers and then
Yeah,
adapt
we
to the
flesh it
story?
out, but we don't necessarily think it's stuff that will be written into the show. But we
Right.
talk about it internally so that we all understand the mythology ourselves and that everything makes sense. So we're always challenging each other to find a story behind the story that connects all the dots.
Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
in terms of the lore that you had created, I have to ask, what lore has been created that we don't know about yet? I mean, there's got to be tons, whether it's Father Vincent, Mother Superior, or even another Halo bearer that was going to be introduced or just used for story purposes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that gets pitched and talked about, but that doesn't end up getting unpacked, because we don't have to. I guess the only stuff that really was discussed that didn't make it through were some of the sequences in season 1 that were too expensive to shoot. Like our flashback to World War II with Sister Melanie, which was just super expensive at the end of the day. We just could not afford to shoot that sequence of earlier warrior nuns in history. It just was one of those things that no one was going to give us the money to tell a story about a warrior nun who isn't actually relevant in the present of the show. But it was great mythology, I thought. And then we went through a whole list of other warrior nuns from the past that were the lineage, because when in season 1, when Ava finds the book that's been hidden by Shannon, we wanted to sort of be prepared to have like an understanding of who the other warrior nuns were through history. So I think we did a little bit of a deep dive in the room, at least in terms of like who those warrior nuns were and what stories they could have had. So that's something that never made it for sure. And then there was also some conversations in the room in season 2 about what we were going to do in season 3, just so that we were teeing up, because you never want to write the season not knowing what the next season is going to be in broad strokes, at least, so that you know that your ending is actually a beginning for each season. And so we did talk a little bit about what season 3 would look like. And I know there's a lot of curiosity into that story. And I think it would have been a great story for sure. It wasn't fully developed into a season at all. It was really more just like, what if this happens, and what if this happens, and what if this happens? So it was really broken down into more like, what happens to these characters if these circumstances happen, and how do we, how could that unfold into a really interesting 10 hours or 8 hours or whatever we were going to end up getting from Netflix for it.
So could you pull a Marvel for us, Simon, and give us those what ifs?
Yeah, I mean, well, we did talk about the idea that that Ava would come back changed, very much a different person, almost like there needed to be an exorcism of some kind. We were always trying to find how our mythology could overlap into Christian Catholic mythology. And so we thought, well, wouldn't it be fun if Ava came back altered or possessed, needed to be fixed in a way that required like Vincent to become an exorcist, required Beatrice to sort of return from her own self-imposed exile to help finish the job, and that Ava was actually kind of the villain in season 3, that the warrior nuns basically had to either kill or save. So sort of like a evil female Jesus story, but everyone around thinks she's awesome. It's kind of like when she comes back, she creates this I guess you could say a populist manifestation of just a savior that everyone wants to have, this belief in that she will come and save everyone as a messiah. And then of course it's revealed that actually she's working for Rhea to undermine everyone and everything. And that way we got to sort of unpack the Rhea storyline, which was really a conqueror who was using Ava without Ava's, with knowledge or permission. And so it would have been kind of a fun, like, twist on the hero becomes the villain, essentially.
That
Wow.
would have been incredible.
Mm.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack right there.
Yeah, and we didn't unpack it all. We sort of set up, I think, the goalposts of what we could do in that season, with Ava basically being a false superhero and actually presenting as someone who was going to be a savior, and actually was just doing the opposite. And then how the warrior nun community would recognize that and realize they had to stop her before it was
And
too
what would her mission have been? Would it have just been to bring like hell to earth? Is that what Rhea's realm and the
I
other
think she
side
wanted
would
to
have
sow
been?
chaos. Yeah, she was coming to basically in her actions, which would look to be benevolent. There was actually a plan to create more chaos out of that, so that by doing this one good deed, it was actually teeing up something even worse that was going to manifest, that Rhea had kind of calculated.
Mhm.
And then of course, by the time you realized it was all a setup, it would be too late. So it was kind of like Ava starting her own religion, I guess you could say, like a step above like modern day. Like if a superhero we were asking the question, was like, if a superhero did show up who had all these powers, would people just flock around them and start a new religion around that person?
Yeah, well, it's kind of what Adriel did.
Yeah.
Ava kind of becomes Adriel 2.0.
Yeah, basically a more an easier version of that for everyone to kind of get behind.
So
Even
she's
sneakier.
Euro pop Jesus.
Europop, Jesus.
Ah, that would have been really cool.
Yeah, but we never really got to unpack it beyond the bigger idea. We had like notions of characters would be, how they would all be served in the story, but it was never at a point where we could sort of break it down.
Mm.
So
I'll leave
leads
that
me
to the fans to take and explore in their own wisdom.
Well, you've given plenty for future fanfic writers to continue our own headcanons and headcanon stories. There's a lot of material for that now, so thank you for that.
No problem.
So one of the scenes we're looking at here is kind of with Lilith's arc and her journey. We know that at the beginning of season 2 production, Toya Turner was originally supposed to be a part of that production, and things didn't work out accordingly, and you guys had to really change kind of the dynamic of how the show went forward. And you guys essentially had a lot of the scripts already written with her a part of the story. So how was it adapting that and then trying to figure out what to do without that character.
Yeah, well, originally, Mary was going to be rescued from Vincent, but at the time, what she didn't realize is um, I guess you could say, hijacked by Vincent in a way that we did with Olivia's character, with Camilla. So the idea was Mary was going to be the one that was being manipulated by Adriel. And so when we couldn't work with Toya, we transferred that storyline over to Camilla. So that whole storyline with
What was Camilla's storyline going to be then?
I can't remember what the original Camilla story. Oh, I think it was her. I think Camilla's storyline was built around her taking more charge of, like, there was a breakdown in the system of because originally Mother Superior was going to die and Mary was going to become Mother Superior.
Yes.
Oh man.
Yeah, and so Camilla's role was going to be that she had to step up and be a leader in a way she hadn't done yet.
Mm.
As I recall, it's been a while since I thought about this. So
Which is hilarious considering that like her first mission was when Shannon was killed, and then we are only 2 months post.
It's
Or
a
like
quick route to be
2
in.
months and 2 weeks.
Well, especially
It was a
when
very
all the other
fast
warrior nuns are
internship.
being killed, there's not a lot of them left. So she kind of has to take this journey where Mother Superior is sort of training her to become a leader faster than she's ready to be.
Mm.
Yeah. Fast track to promotion.
Yeah.
So how was Vincent supposed to be from Adriel's, right-hand man all the way back to an exorcist in season 3? I mean,
Oh,
what was that dynamic going to be?
Was that kind
You're
of a
asking me
pull from the
questions that I've
comics?
never had a chance to think about. I never got to sit in the room with the writers and talk about this. So we just were throwing out ideas about what Vincent could do in season 3. We weren't thinking about how we were logically going to get there, because that takes weeks and weeks and weeks of conversation. I mean, we spend 20 weeks in the writing room before we write, the scripts. Discussing every detail. So for me to tell you anything that was just like a conversation that happened one day and have it unpacked is never going to happen. So I mean, we don't do that as writers. We don't just speculate. We really dig in and we try it out. We test it and we figure it out and we wonder what's broken with it. We try and fix it. We change it 20 times before it makes it to the page. So nothing is sorted out until it's written down.
Well, there goes my hope of having you tell us season 3 right now.
Well, I did.
Kidding.
I just told you what we as a group discussed kind of in a very broad strokes way, but I never did any work on season 3 beyond what I just said because there was no process.
And really quick, Simon, you got involved with this project early on when it was originally supposed to be a movie. And then you helped develop and pitch it, to Netflix for a TV show. Did you have an idea of what you wanted the end game of this series to look like? Did you know did you have the end in mind?
The end in
for
mind
these
was,
characters in a general sense?
we did talk about Ava's ending, which was that she was going to struggle with this responsibility and all she wanted was her life back, and that at the end of the day there was a notion that she would be able to walk away from being the warrior nun, and the cost would be that she would be disabled again, and that she would take that trade, but also it would be to be with Beatrice and have a normal life and not be have all these expectations thrust upon her that she had not asked for.
So she would indeed be the last warrior nun.
Well, we never said that.
Oh.
Hey.
Okay.
My next question was going to be a follow-up of like, so was she able to destroy the Halo? Was it still on Earth? So I think I left to speculation, left to continuation. That'd be
Yeah,
cool.
we never went. We always talked in terms of character, not mythology.
Okay. That's a
So
really interesting
for
process.
us, the end of a show is not the end of the mythology. It's the character's journey end.
That's a really interesting way to think, look at any series.
Yeah, I mean that if you look at any series, you'll see that it actually boils back to that usually.
I've I feel like when I watched Van Helsing, Simon, like I loved that show. And I think you've done an incredible job, in the realm of sci-fi and fantasy. And that show in particular, the last season, it was like the beginning and an ending all together wrapped into one. And you see these characters, it's like, okay, well, what's next? Like, that the story can continue, but it's also like it can feel like a cumulative ending for a lot of characters and be satisfactory at the same time.
Yeah, that's nice of you to say. I mean, that credit goes to Neil LaBute and Jonathan Walker, who took over the show after I left. Who they figured all of that out. I wasn't involved after season one. So, but yeah, I think that you always try to build your story around the journey of the person that the story is being told through. Ultimately, that's the journey. It's the human journey, not necessarily the mythology journey. I mean, you can definitely marry them. Sometimes they can be connected, for sure. In this case, though, we just liked that Ava was an outsider who never belonged in her previous world or even in this world in a way that was normal. So we felt like the story of Warrior Nun, at least our show, would be the Ava story always.
I think that makes a lot of people very happy, and a lot of people can get on board with that kind of message. She will always be our warrior nun. So,
Yeah, same.
all right. Well, we can, I think, continue with these, and we'll move right along.
Sure.
Oh, yes. Well, I needed a change.
Perhaps you could join a rock band. I suppose it makes no difference at this point.
Meaning what?
Well, now that you've been passed over for the Halo.
I wasn't passed over for the Halo, Mother.
Oh, no. May I see it, then?
You make it sound as if I failed. We were under attack.
This has always been your way, Lilith. All excuses and no action. Well, you find that funny, don't you?
Me? No action? I have the scars to prove otherwise.
That doesn't prove anything.
It proves that my mother only cares about the expectations of her daughter, refusing to see the reality of the actual woman sitting in front of her.
I have accepted the only reality that counts. My daughter will never be the warrior nun.
How essential was this for Lilith's arc overall, Simon?
Well, we had. I'll tell you. Here's a little. I shot a scene actually for my episode, for the final episode, where when they come back to the house, Ava finds the mother's body dead, to suggest that she'd been killed. So Lilith obviously getting a little unhinged. But no, we did want to sort of keep Lilith's situation in this episode very contextual to her struggles, in terms of how she was raised, the pressures that were on her from an early age, obviously her traumatic childhood, the idea that finding a safe place with Adriel was, not completely out of the ordinary, that it would be a place where he felt he could help heal her, and address some of her issues. So I think having a family, having a broken family is a good way to get a character to do things sometimes that they, normally you wouldn't want them to do. And you don't have the time always to unpack. We have a lot of moving parts in the show. So we wanted Lilith's journey with Adriel to feel earned as well, without us taking over the show, and taking away from Beatrice and Ava. So we decided that this scene with her mother and this storyline with her home and the house and what the house represented to her would help understand Lilith's motivation to siding with Adriel a little bit.
So it was kind of just using the background and this part of her journey and her story to, I guess, amp up where her character was going and her motivations for that.
Yeah,
Having that cold reflection of her mother.
Yeah, I think that when you see that relationship, you understand that she's been under a great deal of stress beyond just what we had established in season 1, where she was ambitious. Ambition is one thing, but then when you realize you've got, kind of a toxic relationship with your family, that just adds another layer of complication to your decision making. So it just felt important that this be part of Lilith's story.
Yeah, I think it ups the odds of having a heavy mantle of responsibility placed on you at such an early age, that the pressure will break you. And that essentially is what happens with Lilith.
Yeah, basically that's it.
Awesome.
Lilith? Why did it burn me?
I don't know.
Fact is, something over there didn't want me there. I could feel its presence, its hate.
Well, if that's true, if there's some sentient being over there, perhaps we can communicate with it. On our next attempt, we can try and get...
Next attempt? You want me to go back there?
We only just started, right? I mean, this is our chance to see what's beyond the veil.
You mean it's your only opportunity to find your son?
Yes.
No matter what it does to me?
No.
That line broke me.
How can I not be desperate to find my son? And I also truly want to help you. And I truly want to understand. We're partners in this.
Is that so? Look at what your help has done so far, partner. Look at me. You would do anything to bring your son back. I understand that. But I am not your lab rat. If you don't have the answers I need, I'll find someone who does.
So this is essentially her turning point. She drops like the OCS necklace and she's turned her back on everything that she's done to try and help herself, right?
Yeah,
is that
she
kind of
realizes
like the imagery you were shooting for with that?
Yeah, she realizes that the system that she's part of isn't really, going to help her, and she has her own issues that are separate from what everyone else is focused on. That no one is really looking at helping her with. So yeah, she's kind of bad.
Jillian was kind of the last motherly figure in her life, I guess. And then once that
the
ended,
Hail Mary, if you will.
Simon, we had a bunch of questions about Jillian and like what would her role be, if any, in the future? Like, would she stay and help the OCS? Would she go dark as well? Like, how would she react after learning about Michael exploding? All that whole storyline.
Yeah, we always feel like Jillian's curiosity with like the parallel realm and the the mystery of the scientific part of this, of this pseudo-religious mythical universe we had created would be a very handy thing to have in a show like this, where it can be broken down into not only just a non-religious context, but also find solutions to problems that the warrior nuns wouldn't find, that she's approaching the problem from a very different point of view. So I think just in a show that's kind of always playing with, we have this is science fiction in a lot of ways because we're borrowing, religious mythology and we're overlapping it with science fiction mythology that's fictional. And so it's always good to have like another point of view in that realm, who's looking at things with a different set of systems. Because the warrior nuns tend to package everything in the dogma of how they've been, conditioned, and taught. And so having a character like Jillian means you can break that information down into layman's terms and into scientific terms that serve another part of the storytelling, because a lot of this was all like, how do we take religious mythology and overlap it with science fiction so that the religious mythology is never actually contradicted, right? Like one of the questions in your thing was like, where did you get the inspiration for Tarasques? I was like, Tarasques are in the Bible. Just look it up. Like Tarasques are not an inspiration. We didn't invent them. They're a biblical religious construct that was there. We just have to look for it and find it. It's just that no one's ever heard of them because no one's educated on that stuff. So it wasn't us taking anything and reinventing it. It's literally straight out of the book. And there's a lot of stuff too that we overlapped with religion and just gave it another name, and made it so that you could say, oh, well, people who didn't understand what a parallel dimension was would easily confuse that with heaven or hell. And people who didn't understand what a trans-dimensional creature is could easily confuse that with a demon, or a devil.
Angel.
Or an angel. And so that was always our point of reference, was like, we're not going to put anything in the show that hasn't already been determined as being fantastical from a religious point of view. It just was misinterpreted. That was kind of the fun.
So for you guys, then, would Jillian be kind of like, we had some questions about alchemy thrown in here, and it's mostly, diverted to Vincent. But I think like Jillian, discovering divinium, synthesizing the metal, and using it as kind of like this all healing, capability for Michael to be able to live, and using it that way. Is she kind of like the OG, alchemist in the show?
Well, when it comes to using materials that are not of this earth, yeah.
Awesome.
Divinium is not an earth, is not a
element found here, yeah.
A terrestrial element. It's from another dimension. So yeah, she would be the original alchemist for that. Although, technically Adriel did forge it when he first arrived back in the 1300s or 1200s.
True, but he didn't put it in anybody's body, so
no,
she does get the credit for that.
Not
that we know of. Yeah, that's true. That is true. I think with like the Tarasques and things, we're gonna have that pop up on the scene when they meet up with Ava, though, when she puts on the crown of thorns. Was the area that she pops up in, is that kind of like a waypoint? Was that like one of those multi-dimensional spaces that you wanted her to like meet Ava? Like, was the discussion of that supposed to be like their guardians or gatekeepers, or what was their job? Like what was the kind of idea behind what they would bring to the show?
Yeah, we didn't want to give them necessarily, a bad guy, a good guy reference point. We just wanted them to be attached to one of the sides, and we thought when they first come in, their job obviously is to recover the halo. That's their mission. So they're like, Rhea's special forces, if you will, who can travel between dimensions because of the nature of who they are, but they only have a limited amount of time to be able to do it. And that was part of that was built into them. That was not something that was, had to be manufactured by anybody else. That was like Tarasques can do that. The same way we felt like demons, could make their way over to our world in the scriptures. So the idea was that that Tarasques ultimately would be revealed to be on the side of Rhea's forces and anti-Adriel, you know, really that
Yeah, because
was,
we see in the church fight that the Tarask tries to get rid of the Wraiths, and when they come in contact with each other, obviously that's no bueno.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So we did like the idea that we were building out sort of these two sides. There was Adriel's side, which was the Wraith side. There was the Tarask side, which is Rhea's side, and they were all after the same thing,
Yeah.
controlling the Halo.
Speak of the devil.
This way since it was yours. Yes. Thank you.
So
So Simon,
go ahead. I was gonna, yeah. No, you're good. Go ahead.
So you said that originally the plan was for Mother Superior to not survive that. Why did you choose this route instead?
When we realized we couldn't play out the Mary storyline,
Oh, okay.
we decided to not kill Mother Superior.
That's a good reason.
So it was a nice surprise when I got to tell Sylvia.
I bet she was so happy.
At first, I'd warned her that she was gonna, this was gonna be the end for her, and then I got to undo that, which was she was very happy about.
As were we, as
Yeah.
people watching.
But if anybody can die gracefully and resurrect beautifully, it's Sylvia de Fancy. So
Exactly.
my other question was for the Halo power that Ava, was it a Halo power that Ava used to bring her back to life? Or
No,
was
the
it
Halo heals,
her
the Halo
connection
heals,
to the Halo?
the Halo heals all the Halo bearers, as you know.
Right. So
and
it was her
so
connection then.
It was really just being in proximity to the Halo and what was happening in that moment. That there was like this old low bandwidth connection that it still worked.
Okay, so it
She
wasn't
didn't
like
know
a
we're
new
gonna-
Halo power that Ava was manifesting to like
No.
heal people.
No, she wasn't trying to do anything. She thought it was over for her, and she was just grieving.
Interesting, because we've seen some authors who have written like maybe she can control it, and like if say Beatrice was to get hurt, would Ava be able to use that power to save her?
Yeah, no, we never discussed that, and I don't think that is kind of how it works with the Halo, unless that became something that we needed.
Hey, you're the rule maker, not us.
Yeah.
I know, but we didn't need the rule, so we didn't write it. And that's kind of how things work. It's, when it comes into a story, then we find a way to make it play. But if it doesn't, then we usually don't talk about it.
Oh, we'll keep it headcanon that the Halo and Ava become besties and they figure out a way to do that for everybody.
Sure, I think that's fine. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense that if there was a way for her to use it that way, that she could. I
I
think
feel
it's
like
all evolution.
if any warrior nun was to have that ability, her having it would make the most sense.
Exactly.
All right, go ahead, Pam.
The truth of Adriel? I believe I have, yes. Your Eminence, forgive me.
We kind of want to hear more about Vincent's arc and like his changing point right here.
Yeah, I think he realizes that his loyalty to Adriel has changed things not for the better, and that Adriel is basically moving into more of like a fascist system, and that once you're being, and that the idea also that the people, the actual public, have more belief in Ava than they do in Adriel is something that kind of throws him. Like, what's going on? Like, this isn't supposed to work this way. So we love the idea that he was, although he was manipulated and kind of and lured by Adriel, he's still free thinking, and he still challenges him. In fact, we did have other scenes where Vincent challenged Adriel's dogma a bit that ended up on the cutting room floor, unfortunately, but they were really sort of a good insight into how Vincent was sort of like challenging Adriel to do better,
Well, you just made the oath be very happy and sad at the same time.
Thinking to do. That's the nearest bar to Adriel's Cathedral.
We also had a scene where Vincent was in the bar drinking.
I thought the light spared Adriel's balloons.
And he had an encounter with the bartender who was
indeed
afraid to say anything bad about Adriel, because you don't talk bad about Adriel if there are people listening, because you can get into trouble,
right?
And so it was a little bit of an indicator that that Adriel was sort of like taking on much more of a fear-based power than benevolent,
Right. And we talked to that actor, actually. He jumped in on an interview with David Hayter, and he was so sweet and talked about how working on Warrior Nun was just such an incredible and unique experience, and how everyone who was, a part of the show, no matter how big or how small, was just felt so incredibly lucky to be a part of it, and that it was just something that was just so unique to any other production that they had been on. And I think that says a lot to the leader of the ship, the person that kind of gives direction to everybody. I think you're only as strong as the people that you surround yourself with, and I think that with this show you accomplished that beautifully.
Thanks. I think we definitely put together a really great group of people, so that helps create that energy on set. And when you're working long hours and with a lot of pressure and a lot of scrutiny, the last thing you need is a bunch of jerks around you.
Ain't that the truth? Go ahead, man.
I was hoping against hope.
So was I.
Was Ava able to find Vincent because she could sense him?
Well, the line is she went to she knew that this was the closest area to the cathedral, Adriel's Cathedral, where there was a bar.
Well, I guess that's true. That line was done in there. We just didn't get the bar scene, so you're right. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's kind of what we were going for. But yeah, I mean, I think she's been looking for him.
Right.
She knew that she needed to find him because he had the crown of thorns. So I think, we didn't want to sort of waste a lot of time on her searching for him, because it wouldn't have been very interesting storytelling. It was just better to have the reunion happen in a way that was felt like a coincidence, but might not have been.
Right.
Yeah, that scene's amazing. It's actually my favorite scene in the whole series. So kudos.
Thanks.
I have descended from heaven itself to deliver you from pain and fear and the damnation of humankind.
Just one last thing.
I can only pray that God in his mercy will offer forgiveness to this man.
I beg you all, deny this counterfeit angel. Idolize not such false gods, lest you reap God's vengeance. For in forsaking the one true God, thou shalt invoke his wrath.
It has to be now! We'll never get another chance!
Was this iconography on purpose? Like the hands of God and Adam?
Totally. Absolutely on purpose.
Okay.
That's one of my
Did you have anything that you wanted to touch on from that previous scene, Simon, before we move on?
Sorry,
Because I know we only have a few more minutes.
what was the question?
Did you have anything that you wanted to share, or maybe just like any behind the scenes tidbits on that scene? We have Fried Duretti, the Pope. We have Christian Schaefer, who like actually understands that it's not Adriel making this happen.
Yeah.
It's him. So is he aware that he's kind of the puppet?
I think one of the things we did at the end was when Adriel dies is that Christian is kind of released from the spell. And a lot of other people are as well, that a lot of people are basically, once they fall into Adriel's web, are doing things they wouldn't normally do, and are being manipulated by him. So that was kind of like an overall thing we felt important, that, that even with Lilith, that once Adriel dies, that even Lilith is somewhat released from him. So yes, we were definitely indicating that without saying it out loud, that Adriel had the power to move people and influence. Yeah.
Okay.
And then as far as anything else, I mean, there's so many scenes there, it's hard to like pick one to tell any stories about. But I mean, yeah, it was just all every scene on this show was very challenging.
How long did it take you to film that fight scene in the cathedral?
Oh my God, the Adriel Ava fight scene?
Not the one underneath, but the one there where right after Duretti gets fried and they're trying to take out Adriel the first time with Michael.
Oh, that was
because that's a lot of ensemble.
Yeah, that one I think we probably broke up over 2 days, maybe 3. I can't remember. I'd have to check my notes.
Wow. Okay. We know we only have you for a little bit longer, so.
Yeah.
It's too late, B. There's no point in hiding.
This is one of the biggest cemeteries
I know what you are.
in the world.
No, please stop.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
In Spain?
It's a massive cemetery that is so big you can't actually see how big it is from the ground. You have to see it only from the air to see how big it is.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy.
So Beatrice figuring out that Ava was not there, was not real, was that to play towards their relationship and their connection to each other, her being able to recognize that pretty quickly?
Well, it was to show that the stuff that's been put in the air is to create fear in your mind and create doubt, so that you are driven towards Adriel to help you. get over your insecurities. So we wanted to tap into Beatrice's insecurities and her fears.
Perhaps a little unintentional foreshadowing of Dark Ava in season 3.
Yeah, a little bit. We could
Or
certainly
intentional.
we could draw that line for sure. And there was always a part of, I think Beatrice's relationship, which was that Beatrice could never feel 100% secure in who Ava was, basically because of what had happened to her,
Oh wow, I never would have thought about it that way before.
I think we lost them.
Shh. Wait. Someone else is following us. Someone quieter. Oh, Ava.
I'm impressed, Ava. You're so much faster.
Vincent.
So I've seen someone say like
Why are you doing
Vincent
this?
took out Beatrice first because
No,
he
why?
thought she was the bigger threat rather than the Halo Bear. Was that at all something that crossed your mind?
I mean, ultimately, I think
Shannon, all the women who trusted
he
you
would
for power.
he would not be comfortable facing both of them at the same time. No, yeah, I think he needed to make sure he eliminated
Adrian
Beatrice, who's very, very
fine, and the
capable,
hill belongs
honestly,
to him.
physically.
Tell him to come and get it.
Let's compromise.
We also
Take
just
it to
love
him.
men underestimating women in general.
Oh, so true.
Give it up. You know you can't lay a hand on me.
Divinium tattoos. You can't phase through these.
Let's go then.
Was that an Alba choice or was that a director choice of the flipping of the hat?
I think it was Alba.
It's like the initiating of beast mode. I love it for her character so much.
Yeah, I remember being there around the corner, and I think it was Alba who wanted to do
You
it.
shouldn't have done all those shitty things then.
Well, fantastic choice.
The Divinium tattoos were such a great creation as well. It really was able to bring back the strong hand-to-hand combat that was kind of missing a little bit, I think, in some scenes.
Yeah.
Were they going to be something that was utilized in the future, or was that just specifically designed for Vincent?
No, yeah, we'd only ever thought of that for Vincent. Certainly it could have been adapted later by others, but the idea of it was really for Vincent to be able to communicate with Adriel, going back to season 1, where we knew that we shot scenes with Adriel communicating with Vincent in the early part of the season. So we were aware of that from day one, that his Divinium tattoos and the tattoos that he had as a criminal were sort of like overlapping so that you wouldn't really notice the Divinium tattoo part. And you could just ascribe it to his broken past. But yeah, that was definitely part of Vincent's story from the beginning.
And I know we don't have much time with you, Simon, but I don't think we have time to really show too much, but this is alluding to them being in the Prado and Camilla, Adriel appearing to Camilla. Camilla uses her connection with Adriel and the Divinium to ultimately summon him once, again, and project herself in the cathedral. Adriel had projected himself in front of her, there at the Prado, and then when she prays to connect with him and summon him essentially, and then she figures out that connection is a two-way street, and she's able to summon herself in his mind when she's there in the cathedral to distract him. So was that kind of like an Easter egg to her capability of being able to do that in the future? We know that Divinium is like obviously part of that other realm. Would she have been able to communicate with Rhea or Ava on the other side, or like be able to communicate with Lilith because of those connections?
Yeah, I mean, we never really built that mythology beyond the Adriel of it all, because we wanted to connect the Adriel's ability to communicate with Vincent, with the Tarrasques, and with no, sorry, not the Tarrasques, with you know, that the idea that Divinium was this kind of like radioactive element that was allowing this kind of two-way communication, and that in his arrogance he thought that by doing this to Camilla to kind of control her, he forgot that she could actually reverse, you know, the process and use it against him. That was really the simplistic approach from a writing perspective. But yeah, I mean, if you want to dig deeper into like what Divinium can do and all the other attributes it has, we definitely feel like it's like there's a much bigger world there that can be used. And certainly that would have come into season 3, I think, in a way that we would have had to use it.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I
Not
feel
the
like
least of which
Camilla
is
would
just
be
to
praying
stop
to
her.
like try and summon her back.
Yeah. I mean, I think just the exploration of Divinium in a way in terms of how to stop Ava. Like if you
Right.
have a supervillain and you need to stop them, you're going to use all the tools at your disposal, and definitely Divinium would be one of those tools.
All right. And I think one of our questions too was like in the fight with Adriel when Ava explodes Michael, that like the Divinium doesn't affect Beatrice, or that the Halo Blasts don't affect her. Was that a choice that you guys made on purpose to kind
No,
of
she's just
push
blocked.
their
I mean,
connection?
no, Beatrice is way further back in the room, and Ava is blocking her. So we definitely want to
Okay, so
isolate Ava
yeah.
from her. The fact that Ava has to get close enough to Michael to detonate. Beatrice
Right.
is way back at the entrance of the room. So there's just no. I think when Ava does it, she's expecting to die, and she's expecting to protect Beatrice, who's behind her.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense.
All right, guys, I think we have to wrap this up. So I know there's one
Yeah.
last thing that you guys wanted to share with Simon, and yeah. Des,
Let's
take it
see.
away.
So we had in the fandom a bunch of people who have been a part of different projects. We've had in the news cycle, I don't know recently if you've seen, there is official Netflix merch and stuff going on right now. Pix, which is kind of like a sister company to the Funko Pops, have just come out with official Ava like picks or pops, and
that's
we've
awesome.
actually gotten our hands on some.
That's awesome.
And have you had a chance to check that out yet?
No, I didn't even know they existed until right now.
I will shoot you the link. They're
Yeah.
incredible. I don't know if you can put one on the screen so Simon can see it, but
I'm
it's
holding
officially
mine up to the
licensed
camera.
through Netflix.
Yeah, I can see
And
it on the Zoom.
and Fan, if you want to explain what we've got coming up with that before we let Simon go.
Yeah, so we're just gonna have a giveaway. It's not for a chase one, so she won't have the face mask. It's just a basic picks. But we'll have a giveaway coming up on PhD with that. And if you don't win that, I have it on good authority that the OCS newsletter is going to do another giveaway.
That's great. That's awesome. Well,
Yeah,
finally,
official
they're-
licensed merch.
Weird that they're licensing merch now that the show's done, but hey,
Right? So keep an eye out for that.
Netflix moves in mysterious ways.
Yeah,
Inexplicable.
exactly. But
Yeah.
we'll shoot you the link for that, Simon. So if you want
I
to get your hands
appreciate
on one, it is really really cool. I picked up some from my friends that are overseas. Adrian just dropped the link for Thrilljoy. She actually went to New York's I think Comic-Con to go and meet the creator of the company and get, more information on that. So the OCS newsletter has an article about that. And some tweets out if you want to check those out on Twitter. But thank you again so much for doing this with us, for answering the fandom's questions, for giving us information that Netflix didn't give you the opportunity to do, getting this commentary, having this behind the scenes information and kind of having a broader strokes idea of what we could have had moving forward had there been, more seasons of the show. We appreciate you so much taking the time to share all of this with us, Simon. And if you ever want to do this again, PhD will always welcome you back with open arms, and I'm sure
I'll let you
the
know when
fandom will
I
too.
recharge and come back for air. Thanks, guys. Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone. Thanks to
Thank
the
you so
fandom
much.
Thank you so much,
for being,
Simon.
so great and
You have a
loyal.
wonderful
So
one.
very sweet. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Thank you, everybody who was able to join us for the Zoom. We were so glad that you guys submitted your questions to us and that we were able to, pick some really good scenes for you guys to get your hands on some new information from Simon and to see more of the background of this story and where we would have liked to see it go, a little bit more of the lore behind it. And just we appreciate you showing up and being a part of this. The reason why PhD exists is to bring this to you guys, the fans. And so, yeah, we're just glad that we're able to do this.